Hello, my friends, and welcome to What's Up from deep within the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia. Well, it's not deep within the mountains, it's kind of on the edge. But anyway, in the mountains of West Virginia, from the home of the Arlington Institute, we come to you every couple of weeks, Gregg Braden and I, to have a unstructured, unanticipated kind of conversation about what's ever on our minds. And hi, Greg. Nice to have you here again.
John, it's good to see you. I've always thought of your place. You've got the bunker deep in the mountains of Virginia. There is where
Don't
you
tell
are.
anybody. Don't tell anybody.
Well, I didn't tell him where it was. Yeah, it's good to see you, John. And we these are unstructured, unscripted conversations about what's on our minds. Unless you'd like this to go a different direction, I want to talk about the role of religion in what we're seeing unfolding in the world today. And it's been front and center for a couple of reasons. We have some high profile media personalities who are now turning to religion. What period of time the Bible is actually even talking about. Both these things are happening at the same time. And it looks like religion may be now the last bastion as we've broken down the social bonds.
Yes, well, as a matter of fact, it's predictable because when things get uncertain and particularly chaotic and not just transient, but kind of large scale, then people always go back to something with stability. You can either go forward or backward. And if you go backward, you go to religion and things, or you can go forward and try to find the new things.
Yeah, I agree, John. It's a really delicate time and a very vulnerable time. It's interesting. So I don't want to butcher the name of this scholar, Mauro Biglino, I believe, he is currently a Vatican scholar, and it was at the request of the Vatican that he went back. Where this gets really interesting, and even people in our genre that we talk to don't really know where the Bible comes from, and they assume the Bible has always been the Bible. And I had a man in one of my events once, so we were having this conversation. I was on the stage, and he said, "Well, I rely on the Bible that Jesus used." Well,
Right.
it's not the Bible that we see today. So what the translator has done, he went back to the texts that the Greek was derived from. And they're called Masoretic texts. Some of them are Aramaic, some of them are in Hebrew. What he is finding in the book that is just lighting people on fire right now. Number one, that Genesis does not begin with the beginning of the universe.
Right.
It is translated the beginning of this story. There are over 6,000 places where the name of God has been replaced because the belief was it's a name never to be spoken. So it's been replaced with other names like Elohim. What he found is Elohim is a plural. It means
Right.
these beings are responsible for this, not one entity, not God, but these beings. These beings are responsible for the creation of Adam, for example. So it's giving reasons, scholarly reasons, to question what the story actually is. Now, I want to be really clear. It doesn't invalidate what the spiritual principles can mean in our lives. It may change the historic context. There was a historic man named Jesus, a very learned man who left principles.
I had, a pretty reasonable kind of understanding about the story as it was told from that perspective. Mauro Biglino is an official translator for the Vatican. He says, let's go back to the original text and let's not overlay it with any of the assumptions that we have generated through religions and other things about what happened. Let's just read it for what the words are and see what they say. And what it says is that the Bible is, the Old Testament in particular, is series of stories about an alien guy who was, had extraordinary kind of capabilities. They had ships that they flew around in. I mean, these are the descriptions in the Bible and the Old Testament. Fire coming out of the back of these ships. They had all these beam weapons and other things that they could use. And Yahweh was his name. And he essentially was kind of fighting for turf against the other aliens that had other areas that they were responsible for. He was a warlord. He was a local warlord, and he was trying to solidify his position. And
Is this the time in history when all the other things that we thought were true, we now know are no longer true?
that's a very interesting idea, because I think the religions played this kind of social, if not an intellectual kind of role at the time. They were temporal, they were timely. They explained what otherwise could not be explained. And so they provided this model, this kind of temporal model that kind of worked for a while to provide stability and meaning in life.
So here's the question: is it possible to maintain the the spiritual principles that help us in our lives as individuals, and that do provide, without the rules and the dogma and the fear of the religion that was wrapped around the spiritual principles? So maybe, do you think that we as a society, or as a civilization, do we have the wherewithal to discern and make that distinction, to let the religions go, but to maintain the truth of those spiritual principles?
Yeah, sure.
So maybe it's the meaning that we give to those texts, because the historical perspective, in many cases, is true and accurate. That I think we can expect the role of religion to be up for grabs, to be dissected.
Well, I think, yeah, I don't know what makes this principle spiritual in particular. That's just my problem. But I do think things like love and compassion and forgiveness and so on.
Yeah, I agree, John.
But there's a growing awareness, by the way. The past, as we understand it and as we've been taught, whether it's through religion or other things, are not the way reality is. There is this underlying force that's manipulating things on this planet. And that is, for me, rather profound, that those kinds of people are starting to come up and see that they're what they've been taught all their lives and what they presume to be real is probably not true. And so that opens then up for a whole new way of thinking.
Well, I agree, John. I think as the systems buckle and collapse, and the things that we've always believed were true, we find are no longer true, and the people and the institutions that we used to trust, we find have violated and broken those trusts. People will turn more inward, and they'll turn more, I'm going to use the word faith.
Yeah.
And the key is, what do we place our faith in? And I think this is the key. Do we place it in the structure of a traditional religion, and that's what's being questioned right now, or can we place our faith in the values that we know are true and that were lived in spiritual principles, the New Testament, the life of Yeshua, demonstrating in his time what those values meant for him, and maybe inspiring us?
It'll be interesting to see how that kind of self-selects into those who will go towards, say, the government for their sense of security, and corporations or whatever on that side, or those who realize that their whole sense of security is inside of themselves, and that they can conjure up, if you will, an internal kind of framework that is really quite stable in terms of explaining who they are and where they're going. I'm going to see you in Albuquerque in August at the Tesla Tech Conference. You're going to be down there on a Saturday night. We're going to do one of these What's Up sessions there, and then you'll be back in Berkeley Springs in December, and that'll be fun as well.
Right around the corner, right around the corner.
And for all of our viewers, thank you so much for being with us. This comes to you from the Arlington Institute. We're, like I say, we're 100 miles down the road from Washington and Baltimore, and we've got a whole bunch of interesting things we do all around the whole idea of facilitating the transition to a new world. We've been harping on, hanging on that little slogan for decades now, because we saw all this convergence coming and a clear kind of upheaval and emergence of a new world. And so that's what we're all about. You'll find good information about that at arlingtoninstitute.org. And we hope that you'll come back and be with us again in a couple of weeks when Greg and I get together. So thanks, Greg. Nice to see you.
Thank you, John. Have a beautiful rest of the day. Thank everyone for clicking the link that brings us together right now. We look forward to our next.
Thank you. Take care.